If you're watching this, I'm sure you think I'm just some sweet old lady with a couple of stories to tell. Well, I guess you could say that, but what I'm about to share, well, it's not sweet at all. It's a story I've kept buried deep inside me for more years than I care to count. A story about love, loss, and the painful truth of what happens when a mother isn't enough. So, take a seat, dear. This is going to hurt. So if you're watching, baby, go ahead and like this video, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's true life story. 'Cause this ain't just my story. It's the story of too many women who had to smile through the silence. It was the summer of 1972, a year that seems so long ago now, but I can still feel the heat of it. The sun just blazing down, the air thick with that musty smell of dust that always rose up from the dirt roads. We lived in a tiny town in Missouri, a place where everybody knew everybody's business, and my family was as well known as the church bell that rang every Sunday morning. I was young, you see, only about 20 back then. My son, Jeffrey, was just a little boy about 5 or 6. I had him when I was still figuring out who I was, and I was doing my best to raise him right, though, Lord knows, I didn't have much help. His father? Well, he wasn't around. Left me when I was pregnant, gone without a trace. I tried not to think too much about it, though it ate at me every day. But I had Jeffrey, and that made me feel like I had something to hold on to. It was the kind of town where people's eyes were always on you, always watching. If you weren't the perfect image of a good mother, you didn't get much grace. And I didn't exactly fit their mold. I worked as a waitress down at the diner, and when I wasn't serving food, I was cleaning houses or doing laundry for folks who could afford it. Hard work, yes, but I was doing it for Jeffrey. It didn't matter that I barely made ends meet. I loved him more than anything in this world. But life, well, it has a way of changing things. And one day, things changed for me. There was a man, a handsome one, who came into town. His name was Jim, and he was different from the others. I'd never met anyone quite like him. He wasn't from Missouri, but he had this way about him, this charm that made you believe everything he said. He asked me out a few times, and though I was cautious, I agreed. Jim made me feel special, something I hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't mind that I had Jeffrey. In fact, he said he liked kids. Said it'd be nice to have a little family of our own. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to dream of what that might feel like. A man who loved me, a man who'd be there for me, and for Jeffrey. But that dream was only that, a dream. One day, after we'd been seeing each other for months, Jim came to me with a proposition. He said he wanted to get married. He said it would be nice, finally settling down, making things official. And I didn't think twice. I said yes. Of course I did. We made plans, told people about it. It felt so real, so right. But there was something I didn't know. Something Jim didn't tell me. A secret that came crashing down on me like a ton of bricks. I remember that day so clearly, like it just happened yesterday. It was the day of the wedding. The church was full of people, all dressed up in their finest, men in suits, women in pretty dresses with flower bouquets clutched tightly in their hands. Jeffrey was there, all dressed up too, looking like a little gentleman. He was so excited, so proud to see his mother marry the man she loved. Or at least, that's what I thought. I stood at the back of the church, just watching them, watching all the smiling faces, the excitement in the air. The organ played softly, and the scent of roses and lavender filled the space. Jim was up there by the altar, waiting for me. But as I stepped forward, ready to take my place beside him, something happened that I didn't see coming. I felt a tug on my sleeve. Turning around, there was Jeffrey, looking at me with those big brown eyes of his. Only, he wasn't smiling. He wasn't excited. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling. "Mom, you can't come up there. You're not invited. Please, go away." Now, I've heard a lot of things in my life, but those words cut deeper than any insult. My own son, the one I had raised, the one I loved more than life itself, telling me to leave. I froze, right there in the middle of that church. "Jeffrey," I whispered, choking on the words. "What do you mean? I'm your mother. I'm here for you." But he just shook his head. "No, Mom. I don't want you here. Go home." A coldness settled over me. The kind of cold you feel when you realize that the world you've been living in is nothing more than a lie. I can't describe the devastation I felt. I couldn't even speak. I wanted to cry, but the tears just wouldn't come. I just stood there, helpless, watching my son turn away from me, his small back retreating into the crowd. Jim, of course, didn't stop it. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, his face blank, like he'd already known this would happen. And then I walked out. Not down the aisle, but out the door. No one followed. I don't think anyone noticed. The whole town had their eyes on Jim and his shiny new wife. But not me. Not anymore. That's the part of the story most folks don't know. They don't know how it felt to be rejected by the one person who was supposed to love you unconditionally. They don't know how it felt to have the life you'd built crumble before you, to be tossed aside like you were nothing. But I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell my friends. I just went home, sat in my rocking chair, and waited for the pain to go away. But it never did. I guess you're wondering what happened after that. How did I survive? Well, I'll tell you. But that's a story for another time. A part 2, if you will. And I promise, it's one you won't want to miss. If you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you for listening to my story. Please, like, comment, and subscribe if you want to hear what happened next. Trust me, you won't believe it. Stay tuned, dear. This isn't the end. So, where did I leave off? Right, I'd just walked out of that church. The doors slammed behind me, and for a moment, I thought I might just stand there in the parking lot forever, frozen in time. The world inside the church was moving forward without me, and there I was on the outside, looking in alone. It wasn't like I hadn't been used to pain. My whole life has been a series of quiet struggles, you know? Losing my own father at 10, then my mother, just a few years later. I'd lived through the Depression, through wars, through bad marriages and bad decisions. But nothing had prepared me for this. There I was, standing under that hot Missouri sun, staring at the ground, and all I could hear was the echo of my son's words. "Go away, Mom." I had to leave. I couldn't stay there. So, I started walking, as if that would make the hurt go away. The town was small, but I was too proud to let anyone see me broken like this. So I wandered down a back alley where no one could find me. I don't know how long I was out there, hours, maybe. Everything felt foggy, like I wasn't fully present. I ended up in the woods behind the church, sitting on an old log, just staring into the trees. There were birds, yes, and the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. But nothing felt real anymore. Nothing felt like it mattered. Eventually, I went home. I didn't want to, but I had no other place to go. The house was empty. It always was, especially after my husband left, and now with Jeffrey pushing me away. The silence seemed to fill the entire house. The floors creaked with every step I took, the wallpaper peeling at the corners, as if the house itself had given up on me. I could hear the faint sound of a car pulling up outside, and I knew it was Jim. He'd promised he'd meet me after the ceremony, but I didn't feel like talking to him. What was there to say? He hadn't stood up for me. He hadn't stopped my son from treating me like that. He'd just let it happen. I should have known, I guess. Maybe I should have seen it coming. When he walked through the door, he didn't look at me, not right away. He was too busy looking at his own reflection in the hallway mirror, straightening his tie, smoothing down his hair. He was just a man in a suit, with a fresh wedding ring on his finger and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked, finally turning to me. But the tone wasn't caring, not at all. It was more like he was checking off a box. You know, the one where the good husband asks if his wife is all right after her heart's been shattered into a million pieces. How could I be all right? I snapped. I couldn't help it. The anger, the pain, it all welled up inside me like a storm. Jim just sighed, took off his coat, and hung it up like nothing had happened. "It's done, Mary. The wedding's over. Now you need to move on." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Move on. I almost laughed. "You want me to just forget what happened today?" "I don't know what you want me to say," he said, his voice flat. "Jeffrey's grown. He's got his own life. And you need to accept that." That's when it hit me. Jim didn't understand. He didn't care. He never had. He'd gotten what he wanted, a pretty young wife, a fresh start. But he wasn't about to let my past weigh him down. Not when he had his new life to focus on. But then something inside me snapped. I don't know if it was the years of putting everyone else's needs before my own, or the shock of being thrown aside by the one person who should have known better, but I found myself saying something I never thought I'd say. "I'm leaving, Jim," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I'm leaving you." He didn't look surprised. Not even a little. "You can't leave. You have nowhere to go, Mary. What will you do?" "I'll figure it out," I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if I could. The truth was, I had no money, no family around to turn to. I hadn't lived on my own since I was a teenager, and now I was staring down the barrel of a life alone again. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The next few days were a blur. I packed what little I had and moved out of our house. I found a small room in a rundown boarding house in town, nothing fancy, but at least it was mine. I didn't have to ask anyone for permission to stay. No one to tell me what to do, where to go. But that's not where this story ends. No, dear. It gets worse. Much worse. One day, I got a letter. It was from Jeffrey. He wanted me to come to his house. Said he wanted to talk. Now, I didn't know what to think. After everything that had happened, I didn't know if I should go. But something told me that if I didn't try to fix what had been broken, then I'd lose him forever. So, I drove out there. My heart was pounding in my chest the whole way. When I got there, Jeffrey was waiting for me by the door. He looked different. Not the little boy I remembered. He is grown now. Taller, harder. "Mom," he said, his voice cold. "You can come in. But there's something you need to hear." And that's when he told me something that left me speechless. "I'm going to tell you, but not just yet. Because the truth of what happened next, well, I don't know how to say it. But I'll be back soon, and when I am, you'll hear the rest of this story. Believe me, you won't want to miss it." So, where did I leave off? Yes, Jeffrey had sent me that letter, asking me to come over to his place. I'd been running from the truth for so long, trying to shield myself from it, but deep down, I knew that avoiding him wasn't going to fix a damn thing. I drove over there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I hadn't been to his house since that awful day at the wedding, since he'd turned his back on me. The drive seemed longer than it should have been, every turn in the road making me second-guess myself. What would I say? What would he say? Could we fix things? Or was this the end? When I pulled into the driveway, I almost couldn't bring myself to get out of the car. I sat there for a few moments, staring at his house. It was nice, bigger than the little home I'd raised him in. The kind of house a man has when he's got a family of his own, when he's built a life that's nothing like the one he came from. I took a deep breath, wiped away the tears that had started to blur my vision, and forced myself to get out. As soon as I stepped onto the porch, the door opened, and there he was. Jeffrey. He looked like a stranger. Taller, more serious. His face was hard, his eyes cold. "Mom," he said, but his voice was flat. "Come in." I followed him inside, each step feeling heavier than the last. The house smelled like fresh paint and wood polish, clean but impersonal. The kind of house you could tell no one really lived in. Not the way I'd lived in our old place, where the smell of dinner on the stove and the sound of laughter filled every corner. "Sit down," Jeffrey said, nodding toward the couch. I sat, but I didn't know where to begin. My heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't know if I should apologize, or if he was going to say something that would tear me apart even more. He didn't sit down across from me. Instead, he stood by the window, his back to me. His voice was cold, but there was something else underneath it, something raw, something desperate. "I need you to understand something, Mom," he said, his shoulders stiff. "That day at the wedding, well, I was doing what I had to do." I blinked, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean, Jeffrey?" "You threw me out. You made me feel like I didn't belong." He turned then, his eyes meeting mine, and I saw something in them that made my stomach drop. Guilt. Regret. But more than that, fear. "I didn't want to, Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you don't understand what happened that night. What happened to me." And just like that, the room seemed to close in on me. I could feel the weight of his words hanging in the air like a cloud, suffocating everything around us. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. Jeffrey took a deep breath, his eyes darting around the room as if he was trying to gather the courage to speak the words. I didn't tell you everything, Mom. I didn't tell you what Jim did." My heart skipped a beat. Jim. My husband. The man I had trusted. The man I had believed would be a good father to Jeffrey. So, where did we leave off? Right. Jeffrey had just told me that Jim had hurt him. My husband, the man I thought I'd been building a life with, had been the one who'd broken my son. And the worst part? I hadn't seen it. But the pain didn't stop there. No, it wasn't enough for Jeffrey to just share his truth. There was more. Something darker, something deeper, that he wasn't sure he could tell me. He'd hinted at it, but not enough for me to fully understand what had happened. I remember sitting there in his living room, the light filtering through the curtains in the way it does when the day is fading. The world outside seemed to move on, unaware of the storm that was raging inside me. I looked at Jeffrey, my son, the boy I raised with all my heart. The boy who had suffered in silence while I'd been busy with my own life. And I wondered, could I have done something? Could I have seen the signs? "I need you to tell me everything, Jeffrey," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please. I need to understand." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran his hands through his hair, pacing back and forth like he was trying to put the words together. I could tell this wasn't easy for him. It wasn't easy for either of us. Finally, he stopped and turned toward me, his face twisted with pain. Mom, I don't know how to say this, but there's something else. Something you don't know. Jim. He didn't just hurt me. He hurt someone else too. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? Who else? His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in them. He hurt you, too, Mom. And you don't even know it. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I was frozen, staring at my son, trying to make sense of what he was saying. No, I whispered. No, Jeffrey, you're wrong. He didn't. But he cut me off, his voice shaky but insistent. He did, Mom. And I know you didn't see it. You never saw how he was with you. How he'd look at you when you weren't looking. How he'd touch you when you thought he was just being affectionate. But he wasn't. He was using you, just like he used me. I felt my world tilt, my knees buckling beneath me. I could barely hold myself up. How? How could I not have known? Jeffrey stepped closer, his voice soft now, as if he was afraid of what he was about to say. Because you wanted to believe in him, Mom. You wanted to believe that he was good. And so did I. But sometimes, when you're in love, you don't see the monster that's standing right in front of you. I couldn't take it. The weight of it all, my son's pain, the betrayal from Jim, the years of silence, the lies I'd told myself. I sank down onto the couch, my hands trembling. Jeffrey, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you warn me? I asked, my voice breaking. He looked at me, his face a mixture of guilt and sorrow. I tried, Mom. I tried to tell you when I was younger, but you didn't listen. You didn't want to hear it. And I couldn't be the one to ruin your life. I thought, maybe, if I just kept quiet, things would get better. But they didn't. And I had to protect you. Protect me? I repeated, my voice shaking. From what, Jeffrey? What were you protecting me from? He swallowed hard, his eyes avoiding mine. And that's when I realized there was more. He wasn't just talking about what had happened with Jim. There was something else. Something darker. Mom, I need you to understand, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's not just about Jim. It's about everything that's been going on since you left. Since you left him, I mean. You don't know the full story. There's something I've kept from you. Something I'm not sure I can say. My heart was racing, and I could barely catch my breath. What are you talking about, Jeffrey? What else is there? But he didn't answer. Instead, he turned away from me, his fists clenched at his sides. I'm scared, Mom, he whispered. I'm scared of what's going to happen when you know the whole truth. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I felt a cold, not form in my stomach. Jeffrey, please. Don't do this. You can't leave me hanging like this. What truth are you talking about? He turned back to face me, his eyes wild with fear. I'm talking about the last thing Jim did to me. The thing I couldn't tell you before. I stood up, stumbling toward him. Jeffrey, you have to tell me. Please, you have to. But before he could speak, the doorbell rang. We both froze. Neither of us moved. For a long moment, we just stood there, staring at each other. I don't want to answer that, Jeffrey said, his voice low. I can't do this, Mom. But the doorbell rang again, louder this time, more urgent. Don't answer it, Jeffrey repeated, his eyes wide with panic. And that's when I knew. Whoever was at that door wasn't just a visitor. They weren't just here for a friendly chat. This was someone who knew everything. Someone who was coming to reveal the final piece of this twisted puzzle. And just like that, I felt a cold fear grip my chest. Who was at the door? What did they know? And what was about to happen to us? You remember that feeling when the air suddenly feels too heavy? When you're standing at the edge of a cliff and you know deep down you can't go back. That's what it felt like when the doorbell rang again. The sound of it echoing in my chest, louder than my heartbeat, colder than the fear creeping into my bones. I looked at Jeffrey, and I could see the panic in his eyes. He stepped back, almost stumbling, as if he was trying to distance himself from what was about to unfold. He had been holding something back, something important, something that had been tearing him up inside, but now he was frozen. We both were. I told you not to answer it, he whispered, his voice barely audible. But I couldn't help myself. My feet moved before my mind could catch up, and I reached for the door handle. It was as if the door itself had a magnetic pull, drawing me in. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I knew one thing. The person behind that door was the key to everything. The truth, the betrayal, the lies, it was all about to come crashing down. I swung the door open, and there he was. Jim. Standing on my doorstep, looking exactly like he did the day I'd married him. Dressed in that same suit, his hair neatly combed, his expression unreadable. He didn't even look surprised to see me standing there. In fact, it was like he'd been expecting this moment. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I just stood there, frozen in place, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. After everything that had happened, after everything he had done to Jeffrey and me, I couldn't believe he was standing there alive, well, and looking like the same man who had betrayed us both. Finally, Jim broke the silence. Mary, he said, his voice smooth, calm, too calm. I think it's time we had a conversation. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I was too stunned by his sudden reappearance, too overwhelmed by the memories of the years I had spent trying to build a life with him, not knowing the monster he really was. What the hell are you doing here? Jeffrey shouted from behind me, his voice sharp with anger. You don't get to just walk back in, not after what you did. Jim didn't even flinch. He just turned his gaze toward Jeffrey, his eyes cold and calculating. You're still angry, aren't you, Jeff? He said. You don't understand, do you? None of you do. What do you mean? I asked, my voice shaky. What are you talking about? Jim smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was dark, twisted, like he knew something we didn't. I've been watching you both. Watching everything unfold. Watching how you two have been living your lives after everything fell apart. And now, it's time to set the record straight. That's when my blood ran cold. I didn't know what he meant. The weight of his words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Set the record straight? I repeated, my voice trembling. What does that even mean? Jim stepped forward, and I instinctively took a step back, the fear creeping into my bones once more. His eyes locked onto mine, and I saw something there that I couldn't quite place. It was like he was enjoying this, enjoying the power he still had over me, over all of us. There are things you don't know, Mary, he said, his voice low. Things that have been hidden. Secrets that I've been keeping for years. And it's time for you to know the truth. I glanced over at Jeffrey, who was standing there, shaking with rage. His fists were clenched at his sides, and I could see the struggle inside him, struggling with the anger, with the fear, with the pain. I could tell he was ready to lash out at Jim, but he was holding back, as if he was waiting for something. Waiting for the right moment. Stop it, Jim, I said, my voice cracking. Stop playing games. Whatever you have to say, just say it. He chuckled softly, almost like he was amused by my desperation. You really don't understand, do you, Mary? You've spent all these years living with a lie, thinking you knew what happened, thinking you knew what kind of man I was. But you don't. Not really. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. What do you want from us, Jim? Why are you here now? His expression shifted then, his eyes narrowing as he stepped closer to me. I'm here to finish what we started. To make things right. My heart began to race. Make things right? What does that even mean? After everything you've done to us? To Jeffrey. Jim's eyes softened for a moment, almost as if he was about to say something sincere, but then his lips curled into a smirk. You'll understand soon enough. But first, there's something you both need to know. Something that changes everything. He took a step back, and that's when it hit me. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to hear whatever it was he had to say. Some truths were too much to bear. But I knew I had to hear it. If I didn't, I would be stuck wondering for the rest of my life. Get to the point, Jim, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me one last time, his eyes dark and cold, before he spoke the words that made my stomach drop. The truth is, everything you think you know about what happened with Jeffrey, it's a lie. The person who really hurt him is someone you never suspected. And just like that, the room seemed to spin around me. My knees went weak, and I felt like I might collapse right there. Who? I whispered, my heart racing. Who are you talking about? Jim stepped closer, his face just inches from mine. You'll never guess, Mary. Not in a million years. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. Tell me. But Jim didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked out the door, leaving us standing there in the silence that followed. And now I'm left with a question I can't shake. Who hurt Jeffrey? Who was the person I never suspected? I could barely breathe. Jim had just walked out of the door after dropping that bombshell on me. The person who really hurt Jeffrey is someone you never suspected. The words echoed in my mind, over and over again. What did he mean? Who was it? Was he talking about someone in our family? A close friend? I stood there, staring at the empty doorway, unable to move. My mind was racing, my heart pounding in my chest. Jeffrey hadn't said a word since Jim left, but I could feel the weight of the silence between us. He was staring at the floor, his fists clenched tightly at his sides, like he was holding himself back from exploding. Jeffrey, I finally whispered, my voice shaking. Do you know who he's talking about? Who is Jim talking about? But Jeffrey didn't answer. He just looked at me, his face pale, his eyes distant. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle to hold back the truth he'd been keeping from me. He was hiding something, I could feel it. But what? Jeffrey, I said again, stepping toward him. Please, I need to know. Who is he talking about? Who hurt you? His eyes flickered, then he finally looked up at me. There was a rawness in his gaze, a deep pain I'd never seen before. I didn't want to tell you, Mom. I didn't want you to know the truth because I was scared of what it would do to you. Scared? Scared of what, Jeffrey? I asked, my voice growing more desperate. He swallowed hard, like the words were stuck in his throat. Finally, he let out a shaky breath. It wasn't just Jim who hurt me, Mom. It wasn't just Jim at all. My heart skipped a beat. What was he saying? If it wasn't Jim, then who? The person who really hurt me was you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. My legs felt weak, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse. What? I whispered, barely able to breathe. What do you mean, me? How could I have hurt you? I didn't know how to tell you this, he continued, his voice cracking. But it was you, Mom. The way you kept choosing him over me. The way you turned away when I needed you most. You were so lost in your own world, so focused on keeping the family together, that you didn't see how much I was suffering. And it broke me. I stood there, frozen, trying to comprehend what Jeffrey was saying. Was he blaming me for everything? Blaming me for Jim's actions? For the way my life had crumbled? Was this my fault? Was I the one who had failed him? No, I whispered, shaking my head. No, Jeffrey, I never meant to hurt you. I know, Mom, he said, his voice softer now. I know you didn't mean to. But the truth is, I needed you more than anything, and you weren't there. You were too busy trying to fix everything, trying to keep it all together, that you didn't see what was happening to me. Tears stung my eyes as the weight of his words settled over me. I'd always thought I was doing the best I could for him. But in the end, I was blind. Blind to his pain. Blind to his suffering. I was so angry, he continued, his voice barely a whisper. So angry at you for not protecting me. I hated you for it. But I never told you. I couldn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you. And then Jim. Jim just made everything worse. I could barely speak. What could I say? What could I do to fix the damage I'd caused? But then, just when I thought the world had caved in on me, Jeffrey took a step closer. His face softened, his eyes filled with sorrow. I didn't want to hurt you, Mom. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. I didn't know how to make you see what I was going through. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just about what Jim had done. It wasn't just about the lies and the betrayal. It was about everything, the way I had failed him as a mother, the way I had turned my back on the most important person in my life, all in the name of keeping up appearances, of holding everything together when I should have been falling apart for him. But just as I thought I might crumble under the weight of it all, Jeffrey took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eyes. There's more, Mom, he said, his voice barely audible. There's more that you don't know. More than Jim never told you. And it's the reason why he came back here today. The reason why he's been watching us. The reason why he's been trying to control everything. My heart raced. What more, Jeffrey? What else is there? He paused for a long moment, looking like he was struggling with something he didn't want to say, but knew he had to. You're not going to believe it, he whispered. But Jim isn't the only one who's been hiding things. I've been hiding something from you, too. Something that changes everything. I felt the ground shift beneath me, the world tilting once again. What was he talking about? What could possibly be worse than what we already knew? Jeffrey, please, I begged. Tell me. What are you hiding? And that's when he looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the fear in his eyes. The kind of fear that only comes when someone knows something terrible, something that could destroy everything. I don't know if I can say it, Mom, but I have to. The truth is, I'm not the only one who's been hurt by Jim. I leaned in closer, desperate for the answer. Who else, Jeffrey? Who? And that's when the doorbell rang again. I froze. My heart stopped. Who was it this time? What was going to happen next? I stood frozen in that living room, my chest tight with fear and confusion. The doorbell rang again, that insistent, dreadful sound echoing through the house. Jeffrey and I looked at each other, both of us frozen in place, not knowing what to do. Who is it? I whispered, my throat dry. Jeffrey shook his head. I don't know, but I have a feeling we're about to find out. I wanted to run. I wanted to escape, to pretend none of this was happening. But something inside me told me to open the door. Something told me that everything I thought I knew was about to be completely turned upside down. I walked toward the door, my legs trembling beneath me. My hand reached for the knob, and I took a deep breath before opening it. And there, standing on the other side of the door, was someone I never, ever thought I would see again. It was Jim's ex-wife. She looked just as surprised to see me as I was to see her. Her eyes were wide, her face pale, but there was a sadness there, a heaviness I recognized. She stepped forward, and I instinctively stepped back, not knowing whether to invite her in or slam the door in her face. "Am Mary," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to talk to you." I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at her. After all these years, how had she found me? Why now? And what the hell did she want? "I know this is going to sound crazy," she continued, her voice trembling, "but I need to tell you the truth. I've been keeping something from you, something I never should have kept hidden." I glanced back at Jeffrey, who was now standing behind me, his face tight with confusion. He didn't know her, but he could tell something was wrong. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse with disbelief. She looked at him, then back at me. I'm Jim's first wife. And I'm the one who knows what really happened all those years ago." I felt my world shudder. The first wife? The one who had walked away from him? The one who I had always heard about in passing but never truly knew? "I don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "What do you mean? What do you know?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I was there, Mary. I was there when it all started. I was there when Jim's behavior started to change, when he started hurting people, especially Jeffrey." I felt my stomach twist in knots. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, my voice shaking with disbelief. Jim hurt Jeffrey." She nodded. "Yes, but not the way you think. He wasn't just the monster you thought he was, Mary." I didn't want to say it, but it's the truth. Jim wasn't just abusing Jeffrey. He was manipulating him, using him, trying to make him into something he wasn't. And it didn't stop there. He tried to do the same thing to you." My head spun. The words she was saying, things I couldn't even begin to comprehend. "No, you're lying. He couldn't have." "I'm not lying, Mary," she interrupted, her voice urgent. "I know this is hard to hear, but Jim didn't just hurt your son, he hurt you too. He manipulated both of you for years. You were too blind to see it, but I wasn't. And when I left him, I took the truth with me. But now I can't keep it a secret anymore. It's time for you to know the real story." I felt the ground shift beneath me, the world spinning. I couldn't catch my breath. All those years with Jim, everything we'd built together, was it all a lie? "Why didn't you tell me before?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Why didn't you warn me?" She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. "I was afraid. I didn't want to get involved in your life. I thought I could move on. But when I heard about the wedding, the way Jim treated you, the way he treated Jeffrey, I knew I had to come forward. I couldn't let you both keep suffering like this. You deserve to know the truth." I looked at Jeffrey, who was standing there, his face unreadable. I didn't know what to say to him. How could I? How could I make up for the years of pain and silence? "Jeffrey, I started, my throat tight, but he shook his head, cutting me off. "It's not your fault, Mom," he said, his voice low but firm. "You didn't know. You didn't know what he was doing. But now we do. Now we have to face it together." But even as I said the words, I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. There was still something I wasn't hearing. Something I still didn't know. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but they weren't all connected yet. I turned back to the woman at the door. "You said there's more," I said, my voice trembling. "What else?" She hesitated, her eyes darting between me and Jeffrey. Then she took a deep breath, and her words hit me like a freight train. The truth is, Mary, Jim isn't the one you need to worry about anymore. There's someone else who's been pulling the strings all along. Someone even closer to you than you think. My heart stopped. What do you mean? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Her face went pale. The person who's been controlling everything, the person who's been behind all of this, is your son. And just like that, my world shattered. You remember when Jim's first wife showed up at the door, right? That moment when everything seemed to shatter into 1,000 pieces? I thought that moment would be the hardest, but I was wrong. Because, you see, there's a moment when you face the truth, truly face it, and it feels like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, looking into the abyss. But you can't turn away. You have to keep looking, even when everything inside you wants to run. She stood there, still on the porch, her eyes pleading, her hands trembling as she reached for the words that would change everything. I wanted to close the door, run away from all of it. But I couldn't. I had to hear it. I had to know. Mary, she said, her voice thick with emotion, I never wanted to hurt you. But Jim, he's not the man you think he is. He never was. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was spinning, my heart breaking, and I felt like I was drowning in the weight of it all. What do you mean? I whispered, my voice trembling. What are you saying? She stepped closer, her face full of sorrow. Jim isn't the monster you think he is. At least, not entirely. He was broken too, Mary. He was a victim of his own past, a past he never let anyone see. And I didn't know what he was capable of until it was too late. He hurt me, he hurt you, and most of all, he hurt Jeffrey. But it wasn't because he wanted to. It was because he didn't know how to stop the pain inside him. I stood there, unable to speak. How could I take this in? How could I understand this? Everything I had thought about Jim, the man I had loved, the man I had trusted, was being torn apart. He tried to protect you, Mary, she said quietly. But the more he tried, the more it destroyed him. He loved you both, but he didn't know how to love himself. And in the end, it was that brokenness that hurt everyone around him. My mind was in a haze. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was he a victim, or was he just a villain? How could both things be true at the same time? And what did it mean for me, for Jeffrey? How had I let this man into our lives, into our hearts? I never wanted you to know this, she continued, her voice soft, almost as if she was speaking to herself now. But you deserve the truth, Mary. You deserve to understand. And maybe, just maybe, in understanding, you'll finally have the peace you've been searching for all these years. Her words hung in the air, thick with the weight of everything that had happened. I thought of Jeffrey, of the pain he'd carried, of the truth he'd finally shared with me. And I realized something. I realized that the story I had been telling myself for all these years wasn't the whole story at all. There was no one person to blame. We were all just trying to survive, doing the best we could with the broken pieces we had. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I couldn't change the past, but maybe, I thought, just maybe, I could change the future. I'm sorry, I whispered to her, the words tasting like something I had never said before. I never saw the whole picture. I was too lost in my own pain to see what you were both going through. She smiled faintly, the lines around her eyes softening. It's never too late to see, Mary. It's never too late to understand. And now that you do, you can let go of the weight you've been carrying. You've spent so many years blaming yourself. But you didn't have the answers, Mary. Now you do. I stood there for a long moment, letting her words sink in. The past didn't have to define me. It didn't have to define Jeffrey either. We were more than the pain we'd carried, more than the secrets we'd kept. I'm sorry, I said again, this time to myself, to the woman I had been and the woman I was still becoming. I'm sorry for everything. And then, after what felt like an eternity, I turned to Jeffrey, who had been standing quietly behind me. His eyes were filled with a mixture of emotions, relief, pain, but most of all, love. I'm here, Mom, he said softly. I'm here. We're going to be okay. I reached out to him, pulling him into a tight embrace. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The weight, the years of silence and guilt and shame, it was all starting to lift. And in its place, there was something new. Something I hadn't expected. Hope. I hope that we can rebuild. I hope that we can heal. Hope that, even after everything we'd been through, we could still find a way to move forward together. As I held Jeffrey, I knew it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The beginning of a new chapter, one where we would write our own story, free from the past, free from the shadows. I looked up at Jim's first wife, who was still standing in the doorway, watching us. Thank you, I said quietly, for telling me the truth. She nodded, and for the first time, I saw the weight on her shoulders begin to ease. You're welcome, she replied. Take care of each other, Mary. That's all that matters now. And then, she turned and walked away, leaving us standing there, together on the other side of the truth. As I closed the door, I looked at Jeffrey again, and he smiled at me. And for the first time in so long, I smiled back. We were going to be okay. You see, dear ones, I never thought I would find the strength to tell this story. It's like a river that's been running in the deepest part of me for so long, hidden under layers of stone, quiet, but constant. For years, I thought I could bury it, let the waters run still, untouched. But we can only keep secrets buried for so long before the earth trembles and the water rises. And that's when you find out, when the dam cracks open and the truth spills over the edge, sweeping everything in its path. It's not always beautiful, not always kind, but it is real. I've carried this weight, this truth, this pain, across decades, through the seasons of my life. And only now, in the quiet of my years, have I found the courage to let it out, to share it with you. Maybe it's because the weight has become too heavy for me to carry alone. Or maybe, just maybe, it's because I believe that when we speak our truth, we let go of the chains that bind us. And I don't want to carry them anymore. Life has a way of asking us to remember the hard things, to hold them close, as if they are part of us. But those hard things? They don't define us. No, dear ones. They are the soil, the dark earth that nourishes the seeds of our strength. It's the broken branches that make the tree grow deeper roots. I've learned that now, what it means to endure, what it means to rise after everything has tried to knock you down. For those of you out there who are carrying your own burdens, who have been bruised by life and the hands of others, please know this. You are not alone. You are seen. And your story, just like mine, has a purpose. Maybe you can't see it now, or maybe it feels too heavy to carry, but trust me, there's light ahead. The sun will rise again, even after the longest night. And when it does, it'll shine on the strength that you never knew you had. Our stories, no matter how painful, are part of our legacy. We pass them on, not just in words, but in how we live, in the love we give, in the healing we choose. We leave pieces of ourselves behind, like footprints in the sand. And as the tide comes in, it erases them. But our footprints, they stay in the hearts of those we leave behind. So, if you've listened to my story, if you've held my pain in your heart, then you've also held my hope. The hope that we can all find the courage to speak, to heal, to live again. You can build something beautiful from the broken pieces of your life, something that lasts long after you're gone. That's the legacy I want to leave. Before I go, I ask this of you, dear ones, if my story has touched you, if you've felt even a small part of what I've shared, I would be grateful if you could leave a like, a comment, or even a word of encouragement. Share your own stories, too, if you're ready. There's power in speaking our truth, and the world could use a little more of that, don't you think? As for me, well, I'll be here, still living the life I've fought for, still breathing, still loving. I am no longer bound by the shadows of the past. The river has finally reached the sea, and I'm at peace. This is Mary. This is my story. And as I leave it behind, I embrace the beginning of something new. A new chapter. A new season. Because even in the ending, there's always a seed of rebirth. And so, with a heart full of peace, I bid you farewell. May your journey be as kind as the love you give, and may your soul find the light it seeks. Take care, dear ones. Until we meet again. Pause. And remember, the river always finds its way home.